sort of glorified and dressed up as some sort of queen. Instead, the words in the New Testament and in the prayer for the day suggest that she was quite a humble, small-time sort of figure. In fact, she was probably just a teenage girl, and you can imagine how frightened she would be to suddenly find that she was being commanded by God to bear his son. It must have been quite mystifying and quite terrifying. And not only was she young, but she came from a fairly modest background. She wasn't the sort of figure you'd associate with the mother of kings and all the rest of it. And yet, she became the key instrument in our redemption, in one sense. The prayer for the day also goes on about how God approached Mary in her lowliness, and she became the vehicle through which he redeemed mankind. Now, what does redeeming mankind really mean? Redemption is just about setting slaves free. Throughout the Bible, the word is used in that sense, and it all goes back to the idea of the Exodus and the slaves, the Hebrew slaves, being freed from Israel, from slavery in Egypt. Sorry, I meant from Egypt. From slavery in Egypt. The whole idea of redemption is all about setting slaves free. And we are set free when we're redeemed. We're set free from slavery to the old law. In other words, we're set free from thinking that if somehow we do something wrong, we're going to be terribly punished and being motivated simply out of fear of the law. Instead, we are set free because we're now motivated by the idea that we should love one another and show mercy. And so, Mary is often associated with the notion of mercy. Mercy is what we're commanded to show in our lives from the Old Testament prophets onwards, right through the New Testament. Mercy is the dominating quality of a Christian life. It should be the outstanding quality of a Christian life. And it comes to us through Mary's cooperation. The idea that we've been forgiven our sins, we're free from slavery to the law, we can get on with showing mercy to others and loving others. This has all come about because of Mary's lowliness, Mary's humility, and Mary's acceptance of her role in cooperating with God. And yet, somehow or other, when you talk about that, it doesn't sort of remind you of all the famous imagery that you see of Mary. Very often, the figure of Mary is held up as some sort of example of feminine virtues because she was somehow obedient to a patriarchal God. And yet, as God doesn't have a gender, as God doesn't have a gender, she doesn't need to be patriarchal. So, if we think of God as our mother rather than father, then we can sort of, in a way, put away all that sort of patriarchal imagery. We can get rid of the idea that being a Christian disciple is just simply about obedience and nothing else. Obedience which so often arises out of fear. Instead, we think about Christianity as being about showing mercy, cooperating with God, and spreading the love of God. We're asked to cooperate. We're asked to work with God in redeeming the world and setting the rest of the world free. And Mary, in a sense, becomes the perfect example of that. She is a sort of representative of the whole of humanity. And that she and God are working together, in a sense, by her acceptance of God's will, by her lowliness and humility. She becomes the vehicle through which God works his redemption. But we don't necessarily have to think of it in terms of hierarchy and obedience and rulers ruling over their subjects. A lot of the traditional imagery associated with Mary can actually seem quite oppressive compared with today's values. But if we think of her instead as simply a girl who cooperated with God, who accepted God's will, and was prepared to become a vehicle, she was the vehicle through which God spread his mercy. She was the vehicle through which God brought a new revelation. Instead of being a God of fear, he becomes a God of mercy and a God of love and forgiveness. And it's only through Mary's cooperation that we see this example and come to learn about this and can see this new revelation. And through her, we come to be set free, and hopefully we can go on and give thanks for that by showing that example in our lives to other people. Lives not based on fear